Hey everybody, I'm Tim Mooney with the Timothy Mooney Repertory Theater, and today I'm continuing to work my way through my acting textbook, Acting at the Speed of Life, Conquering Theatrical Style. Last time around, I set you up with the beginning of Chapter 3, a brief overview of soliloquies, which you should be able to find on this same website. And today I'm going to take on the next chunk of Chapter 3 on asides. While actors generally have little trouble getting a soliloquy, the aside might still trip them up. The actor who truly gets this is extremely powerful. The aside most often enlists the audience to take sides against an opponent. In the midst of a scene, I deliver a line that is not heard by the other performer on stage. Actors are sometimes disoriented. You mean I have to look out there and talk to them? If the aside is this uncomfortable, that is a fairly good sign that the actor hasn't got the sense of the style to begin with. The aside is the most self-evident use of the presentational style, which lives and breathes at the heart of the play. We deliver asides in real life all the time. Let's imagine I'm talking on my cell phone, but that I'm in a conversation with someone I don't like very much, who won't stop talking. And somewhere in there, my best friend enters the room. I attempt to wrap up this conversation. Okay, well, thanks for calling. I'll see you at the party at the other end interrupts. I roll my eyes to my friend. Okay, great, I'll do that. And then I'll catch up with you. Another interruption. I widen my eyes, shrug outrageously, and open and close my hand like it is a flapping mouth. Got it. So then let me get back to you. Again. This time, I cover the mouthpiece of the telephone. This guy just won't shut up. He goes on and on. Right, yeah, I hate this guy. He's such an asshole. This is the exact way that an aside works. We have covered the mouthpiece, accepting the convention that the other party cannot hear what we are saying as we bring the audience into our confidence. It is an absolute violation of the laws of physics, as we are meant to accept that the very sound waves that emerge from my mouth somehow divide and separate and work their way entirely around the ears of the character who is standing perhaps right next to me, and then proceed to gather themselves and deliver these words to people perhaps hundreds of feet away sitting in the very last row of the auditorium. Those audience members are, almost without exception, our best friends and neighbors. They are on our side as far as we are concerned, even if we are the villain in the play. When we speak an aside, we are looking for and almost universally get their support. How do we know when something is intended to be delivered as an aside? The actor talks to the audience. No, I mean before that. As an actor, how do you know? It says so in the script. How does it say so in the script? Well, in parentheses, it says aside. Yes, and how did it get there? Somebody put it there. Who? The playwright? No. The stage manager. Someone else pipes in. Keep going. The publisher. The editor. Yes, Shakespeare wrote almost no stage directions. He couldn't just run off a copy of the script for all of the actors participating. He may well have been writing out a series of sides by hand. These actors also lived and worked in the same stylistic universe that Shakespeare lived in. He didn't actually need to explain these things. Somewhere in the process of preparing the script for publication for our modern reading audience, somebody figured out that this was originally intended to be delivered as an aside, whereby, even though the audience may well be able to hear the actor perfectly clearly from as much as 150 feet away, another character, also on stage, perhaps within arm's reach, cannot hear it. So how do you suppose that the editor knew that this was intended as an aside? The actor looked at the audience. Before seeing it performed, looking at the unedited text, how did the editor know? He noticed that the other character doesn't react. Yes, contextually. The editor is reading along, and character X says something really outrageous, and yet character Y doesn't react. And so the editor knows this statement should have sent character Y through the freaking roof. Character Y doesn't go through the freaking roof, and so this comment must have been an aside. And so what did our editor do? He put the word aside in parentheses. Great, and how do we know when character X is done with his aside? The editor puts in to character Y. Great, you're with me so far. Now, here's the important part. Just because some editor somewhere does not put the word aside into the text does not mean that the speech is not intended to be delivered to the audience. There's a triple negative in that sentence, so it's a little tough to follow, so I'm going to say it one more time. Just because some editor somewhere does not put the word aside into the text does not mean that the speech is not intended to be delivered to the audience. Our assumption tends to be that these asides and soliloquies are somehow the exception, intrinsically different from the rest of the speeches of the play. But performers were always talking to the audience, sometimes even in the middle of direct address to other characters. Asides and soliloquies are simply the most obvious manifestation of their vision of what theater is meant to be. They were the tip of the iceberg. Only some 10% of an iceberg is visible to us because there's 90% of an iceberg supporting it from below. An aside surfaces to our awareness only because the scene otherwise would not make sense, and our relationship with the audience is supporting it from below, as it were. When Rosalind, in As You Like It, says, "'Tis such fools as you make the world full of ill-favored children." There is no indication in the script that says aside, but a dry look out at the audience casts all those attending the play as ill-favored and gets a nice laugh each time. It was not an either-or, black-white, on-off situation. Actors didn't flip schizophrenically from face-to-face dialogue to aside, pivoting 90 degrees in one direction and then back again. They address the audience and each other and explore every degree of connection in between. When Arnulf in Molière's The School for Wives wants to present his ward, Agnès, with examples of wicked men or evil coquettes, a simple glance at the audience before him will give him plenty of examples for his argument. The audience, feeling itself cast in the roles of those townspeople, would participate more actively, hating Arnulf all the more or sympathizing more emphatically with Agnès. When we rethink these plays in that light, they come alive. It becomes impossible to treat them as museum pieces. A museum implies some level of uninvolved, one-way observation, a neutral and pristine examination of a culture defined and separated from our own by an implied velvet rope. But when that play demands my participation, then Arnulf's outward sneer at me keeps me from placing these characters under glass. Even when I consciously know that Arnulf lived more than 300 years ago, the sneer of the live actor in my direction is an immediate indictment of me, here, now. I don't need a director's concept to make the play relevant to me. As human beings on stage are looking at and sharing with other human beings in the audience, the matter is relevant already. If it wasn't, then this play would not be available to us now. It would not have stood the test of time. I cannot overemphasize the power of the difference between an argument that is represented behind the fourth wall and one that is presented, laid directly before us for our participation and reaction. In the first instance, we, the audience, are peeking in through an unseen window or a one-way mirror. We are distant observers, much more judgmental, and we don't even know who we are. Once the actors begin to speak to us directly, we then see ourselves as confidants, judges, witnesses, lovers, enemies. We play a role in the action, and in the process, it matters much more just who should happen to come out on top. If I am, John Smith from the year 2022 observing an action from the 17th century reenacted with exact precision, I'm not particularly likely to care about the success or failure of the protagonist. But if I feel myself somehow akin to the family of Orgon in Tartuffe, having been cast as a fellow townsperson or neighbor, simply by the virtue of the actor's inclusion of me in the conversation, then I will care whether or not the family is destroyed by the charlatan. Because when they get evicted, Tartuffe, or someone very much like him, may well set his sights on destroying me. And once we have made that leap, we begin to question much more actively. Are there, in fact, any Tartuffes around me now? How might I prevent such a rogue from taking my wife, my home, and my reputation? And that's the second part of Chapter 3. Again, if you just can't wait for another week to go by, pick up your own copy of Acting at the Speed of Life, Conquering Theatrical Style, and read your way ahead. And if you enjoyed this episode, please hit like or subscribe or tell a friend. And finally, my breakneck versions of these plays are all available for booking across the United States. You can find many video versions of my one-man shows available for rental or purchase at breakneckshakespeare.com. Thanks for joining me. See you on the stage.